I want you to imagine this scene. A woman standing in the middle of a crowded room, yet somehow feeling utterly alone. Maybe you've caught that look in someone's eyes before. Maybe you've seen her in a cafe, quietly stirring her coffee, scanning the room for a friendly face that never seems to appear. You might have brushed past her on a city street, or even watched her sit silently in a corner at a social gathering. You've glimpsed that slight hesitation in her gaze, that moment where she almost steps forward to join in, but pulls back because something in her life told her that nobody really wants her around. This is the reality we're talking about tonight. This is the challenge many women face when they find themselves with no friends, no dependable shoulders to lean on, no place to feel accepted. Perhaps you've been that woman, or you know someone who's through that exact pain right now. There's power in naming it and confronting it head on, because when we shine light on a problem, we cut through the shadows that keep us isolated and ashamed. That's what we're doing here tonight. We're going to talk about that particular heartbreak of having nowhere to turn, no loyal allies, and no sense of belonging. This is important for every single one of us because community shapes who we are, and the lack of it can take an immense toll on our mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. When there is no friend to call at midnight, no one to laugh with over silly mistakes, no presence to remind us that we matter, then we start to doubt our own worth. We lose hope, we lose perspective, and worst of all, we lose ourselves. But tonight, we are not here to place blame or to pity anyone. We are not here to point fingers. We are here to understand, to empathize, and to empower. We're here to ask the hard questions and ignite a change that begins from within. Because if you don't feel like you belong, if you feel that suffocating sense of loneliness, if you believe that no one truly sees you, I want you to know there is a way forward. There is a path out of that darkness. And if you've never experienced this in your own life, I still challenge you to listen closely, because you may very well be the key to someone else's sense of belonging. We need each other. We need each other more than we often dare to admit. Tonight is about taking that first courageous step. It's about daring to look inward and to understand what might be getting in the way. It's also about a call to action, because change doesn't happen by accident. It happens when we decide that enough is enough, and we won't accept isolation as the final answer. When we decide to meet fear with faith, to meet shame with compassion, and to meet loneliness with genuine outreach, that's when the story transforms. And make no mistake, it's not easy. It can be terrifying to step out, to be vulnerable, to admit we're hurting. But I stand here as living proof that in every struggle there's a lesson, and in every lesson there's an opportunity for growth. Let's walk through those opportunities step by step so that the woman with no friends doesn't remain invisible, doesn't remain voiceless, and doesn't remain stuck where she is. We're going to shed light on the forces that keep her isolated, and then we're going to confront those forces with honesty and courage. So step with me into this conversation, and let's see if we can bring hope to the places that most need it. I want to start by saying this loud and clear, You have to recognize what leads a person to this painful place. Sometimes it's not just one single factor. It's an accumulation of small experiences, subtle discouragements, and repeated disappointments. If you never stand up for who you are, if you've always felt overshadowed by others, if you silently let the negative voices echo inside your head, then it becomes almost impossible to believe that anyone would care about you. This creeping insecurity steals your voice. It silences your louder. It makes you think, why try? Why bother? And that is dangerous territory. Let me share an example. I knew someone who, after years of being in the background, just hovering on the outskirts of her own life, eventually believed that she was unwelcome wherever she went. She convinced herself that she was always an afterthought. Before long, her self-imposed isolation became her comfort zone. Stepping out of that bubble filled her with anxiety, with dread, with nightmares of rejection. But here's the thing. Isolation breeds more isolation. If you never fight that inner storm, it grows. If you never challenge those negative beliefs, they expand until they consume you. That's the harsh reality. It might feel safer to avoid people, but that safety is an illusion. It becomes a cage that locks out every chance of connection. The consequences are severe. Self-esteem plummets, opportunities vanish, and depression can sink in like a heavy fog that blinds all hope. The effect on daily life is unmistakable. You start thinking twice about simple interactions, like saying hello to a neighbor or smiling at a coworker, because you assume they won't respond or they don't care. In that environment, potential friendships die in the cradle. But recognizing this downward spiral is the first key to breaking it. You've got to ask yourself, am I fueling my loneliness by reinforcing beliefs that I'm not worth knowing? If the answer is yes, then it's time to rewrite that script. And how do you do that? By challenging every negative assumption, by refusing to give in to the belief that you are less valuable, by getting up every day and saying, I have something to offer. That's not easy. You might feel ridiculous at first. You might feel like an actor reciting lines you don't quite believe, but keep at it. Keep going. Sometimes the act of stating your worth precedes actually feeling it. It's like planting a seed. You water it, you nurture it, and over time, you see a sprout, then a bud, then a full bloom. And in this journey, you may need to step out of your comfort zone and go where potential friendships dwell. It could mean joining a local club, volunteering at a community center, or attending a class that aligns with your interests. It's uncomfortable at first, I know. But every time you show up, every time you make eye contact, ask someone about their day, or offer a kind word, you chip away at that internal narrative telling you that you don't belong. Now, I'm not saying all people will respond with open arms, because life doesn't work that way. Some people might be dismissive or indifferent. And yes, rejection stings. But you can't measure your self-worth by how others behave. You have to persist. So I invite you to push past the fear. Identify the environments where you might find genuinely like-minded souls. Begin with small interactions. It could be a few words exchanged over a shared interest. It might be a quick smile in a hallway. Brick by brick, you'll find ways to build a circle of support. And remember, everyone feels awkward at some point. You're not alone in that feeling. The difference between those who find their tribe and those who do not often comes down to the courage to keep trying. That's the lesson in all of this. Courage isn't just about facing big battles. It's about stepping into daily moments of uncertainty and saying, I'm still worthy. And I refuse to fade into the background. Because once you start seeing little victories, they'll multiply. You'll look back and realize that the seemingly endless desert of isolation has given way to oases of genuine connection. And from there, you can carry on to the next stage, which is understanding the role past wounds might play in holding you back. Let's shift gears and talk about a deeper layer. Sometimes the woman with no friends is burdened by ghosts from the past. Maybe she grew up in a home where her voice was never heard. Maybe she experienced betrayal in a close relationship, and that betrayal convinced her that people are not to be trusted. Maybe she endured bullying in school or suffered a heartbreak so severe that she vowed never to let anyone in again. Those scars don't just fade by themselves. They linger, shaping how she views the world, and more importantly, how she views herself. If you've ever felt that pang in your chest at the thought of opening up to someone new, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those old memories come rushing back, screaming, "Don't do it! You'll only get hurt again." It's critical to understand that these invisible barriers are real. They dictate how we see potential connections, often through a lens of suspicion or defeat. The tragedy is that these past hurts can rob us of present joys. If you hold on to the pain, you may not even realize how tightly you're clutching it until it becomes part of your identity. That's when you start to say, I'm just not a people person, or no one ever stays in my life, so why bother? These phrases are the outward signs of inner wounds, and the longer these wounds go unhealed, the harder it is to trust, to reach out, or to accept gestures of kindness. So how do we tear down these walls? We start by acknowledging they exist. We give ourselves permission to say, that hurt me. That loss changed me. But I won't let it define me forever. Sometimes you might need to seek professional help or confide in a mentor, a counselor, or a spiritual advisor. That's not a sign of weakness. It's a step toward liberation. You might also consider journaling your thoughts and feelings, identifying patterns in your thinking, and challenging them. For example, if you constantly hear yourself say, I'm unlovable, write that down and ask, is that really true, or is that my fear talking? Over time, these reflections can expose the lies you've been telling yourself. And as you pry them loose from your mind, you create space for healthier beliefs to take root. By taking that step, you're putting yourself back in the driver's seat of your own life. Now, let's apply this to a real story. I recall a woman who was betrayed by her closest friend in college. The details were painful, a level of backstabbing that left her feeling she could never trust another soul. For years, she wore that wound like armor, shutting out anyone who tried to get close. She built this fortress of solitude, convincing herself it was for her own good. But what she failed to see was that the fortress was also her prison. It wasn't until she decided that she deserved a fuller life that she sought help. She went to therapy, faced her betrayal, processed her anger, and saw how her pain had twisted her perspective. Slowly, she began to open up again. It wasn't instant, and she stumbled a few times, but each small success, a kind conversation, a shared moment of joy, became a stepping stone to the next. That's the power of confronting your past. But be warned, ignoring this part of the journey has consequences. If you try to forge friendships while dragging unaddressed baggage, you might sabotage connections before they blossom. You may interpret harmless comments as threats or push people away the moment they get too close. The result is the very isolation you fear. So it's crucial to do the work. Reflect, heal, and then step forward with renewed faith in yourself and in humanity. Healing past wounds is not a quick fix, but it's a necessary one if we truly want to connect with others. Once you commit to that process, you'll find that trust is possible again. You'll realize that opening your heart can be an act of courage and not just a risk. And that sense of courage can be the gateway to forming meaningful bonds. After all, relationships thrive on honesty and vulnerability is impossible when your soul is guarded by layers of old pain. So ask yourself what I'm holding on to. Which memory or event from the past is secretly dictating my willingness to connect? Answering that might be uncomfortable, but it sets you on a path to freedom. And once you've cleared that path, you'll be ready to take actionable steps to form friendships rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. That leads us to the next challenge: how to cultivate real friendships in a world that often feels disconnected and rushed. Now that we've talked about recognizing self, limiting beliefs, and healing past wounds, let's focus on the practical steps to building meaningful friendships. Because even after you've decided, I'm worthy, I've addressed my old hurts, you still face the challenge of turning acquaintances into true friends. In a world buzzing with social media, quick texts, and fleeting interactions, making deeper connections can feel like climbing a mountain without a map. It's tempting to collect endless virtual contacts without ever forging a single genuine bond. But real friendship is built on presence, understanding, and shared experiences. So let's break it down. First, you have to show up. That sounds simple, but it's powerful. Showing up means being consistent physically and emotionally. If you say you'll be at a meet up or that you'll call someone, do it. Consistency tells people they can rely on you, and reliability is the foundation of trust. Trust is the glue that holds any relationship together. Second, you have to be willing to listen. Most people are starved for genuine attention. If you focus more on asking questions about them, their hopes, their stories, rather than trying to impress them with yours, you'll find that people open up in surprising ways. They'll remember you as the person who actually cared enough to listen. And once that door opens, vulnerability can flow both ways. Third, you need to invest time. Friendships don't blossom overnight. They need watering. They need your presence in big and small moments, from celebrating a promotion to sharing a quiet conversation when things go wrong. In a busy world, carving out time sends a strong message. You matter to me. That's how you nurture a connection that stands the test of life's ups and downs. 4. You have to learn to communicate openly. Don't let resentment or misunderstanding grow. If you sense a friend is upset, if there's tension, address it. It's far too easy to let small issues fester into big divides. Real friendships can handle uncomfortable conversations because they're built on honesty, not on superficial harmony. As you embrace these steps, be mindful of self-sabotage. Sometimes fear might sneak up and whisper, "Don't text first." You'll look desperate, or don't share your real feelings. You'll just scare them away. That's the voice of insecurity talking. Overcome it by reminding yourself that friendship is a two-way street. It requires give and take, risk and trust. And if you're the one reaching out more often at the start, that might simply be how the relationship takes root. Push through that discomfort. Let me give you an illustration. I once knew a woman who moved to a new city with no contacts. She told herself she wanted friends, but she was too shy to initiate anything. She'd attend a gathering, linger on the sidelines, and wait for people to notice her. If no one did, she concluded that she was destined to be alone. One day, she flipped the script. She decided to strike up a conversation with a woman who looked just as out of place as she felt. It was awkward at first, but they quickly discovered a shared love for outdoor photography. A spark ignited. They planned an outing. That one connection led to meeting more people, joining a local group, and gradually building a new social circle. The difference: she took the risk to engage rather than waiting to be engaged. This principle applies universally. Friendship isn't about waiting for an invitation. It's about creating and extending one. But with every invitation comes the possibility of rejection. You might invite someone to coffee and never hear back. That's not a referendum on your worth. It might just mean they're busy or not interested. Your job is to keep reaching, keep connecting, because each time you take that step, you move closer to finding those who genuinely resonate with you. The alternative is to stay locked in loneliness, and that's no life at all. If you fail to adopt a proactive mindset, you risk slipping into resignation. You risk letting the fear of rejection rob you of even the chance of acceptance. So be mindful. Ask yourself every day, have I made any effort to connect with someone new or to deepen an existing connection? If the answer is no, you know where to start. The result of these consistent actions can be life-changing. You'll find yourself supported, seen, and valued. You'll gain people who'll celebrate your wins and hold your hand during your losses. You'll discover a sense of belonging that lifts your spirit even in the darkest hours. And that, my friends, is the beauty of real connection. It's not about the quantity of friends, but the quality of shared understanding. Once you experience it, you'll never want to go back. Now, maybe you're hearing all of this and thinking, it's too late for me. Or, I've tried, and it never works out. That's just a lingering echo of doubt. Don't let it convince you that you're stuck where you are. For every missed opportunity, there's a chance you didn't see. For every disappointment, there's a lesson learned that can guide you to a new approach. The key is to keep going, to keep pushing against the weight of loneliness, to keep inviting connection into your life. Once you do, you'll see that even a single genuine friendship can make a profound difference. And from there, you can grow your network slowly but surely, as each new bond leads to another opportunity to meet new people and discover more of what life has to offer. The journey is gradual, but the outcome is worth every step. With that foundation laid, let's step into our final reflection and draw together the threads of insight we've uncovered so we can move forward not just informed, but transformed. I stand before you now, having walked you through the pivotal steps that can transform a life marked by loneliness into one enriched by friendship and connection. Let's revisit them and see how they weave together into a coherent path out of isolation. We began by naming the struggle, the sheer heartbreak of a woman who finds herself with no friends, yearning for companionship, yet paralyzed by fear or the belief that she's unworthy of it. Recognizing that longing was crucial, because unless we acknowledge the hurt, we can't begin to heal it. We then explored the pervasive power of self-limiting beliefs, how quietly they creep in, rewiring our brains to assume we're not valuable to others. We saw the cascading consequences, missed chances, isolation becoming the norm, and a deepening sadness that leaves no room for hope. We realized that if we don't challenge these beliefs, they'll bury us in a cycle of loneliness that's hard to escape. We talked about the importance of confronting past wounds, the betrayals, the disappointments, the early life experiences that taught us not to trust or to stand small in the background. We learned that unless we shine a light on these hidden hurts, they poison our present day interactions. We sabotage ourselves, pushing people away the moment we sense even a hint of vulnerability. We recognized that healing this hurt doesn't happen overnight. It requires reflection, possibly therapy, and a willingness to face our pain. But by facing it, we reclaim control. We refuse to let our past dictate our future. And then we focused on the building blocks of real friendship. Showing up, listening, investing time, and communicating honestly. We stressed that friendships need consistent effort, mutual respect, and a dash of bravery. None of us can form lasting bonds if we remain too afraid to be the first to reach out. We discovered that even small acts, like introducing ourselves to someone at a gathering or volunteering in a community project, can open doors to lifelong connections. The lesson here is simple yet profound. If we want connection, we must create openings for it. But this is where the real work begins, because knowing these steps is one thing, practicing them is another. How many times have you heard advice that made perfect sense, but never applied it to your own life? Tonight, I challenge you to take action. Don't just file these ideas away as interesting theories. Implement them. Ask yourself, which limiting belief is still holding me back? What wound from my past keeps me on guard? How can I take a small but concrete step toward forming a new connection this week? Maybe you'll strike up a conversation with a coworker you barely know. Or maybe you'll text someone you haven't reached out to in months just to see how they're doing. Or perhaps you'll finally join that local class or community group that sparks your interest. The moment you move from intention to action, you shift your entire reality. You're no longer waiting for friendships to appear out of thin air. You're stepping forward to claim them. That's powerful. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. If you're feeling lost, there are resources. Counselors, support groups, faith communities, online forums. Sometimes we need a guide to help us navigate this terrain. There's no shame in that. Reaching out for support is a testament to your determination to grow. Growth often comes with growing pains. You might face setbacks. You might sense that your old fears are creeping back in. If that happens, don't panic. Recognize that setbacks are part of progress. Keep moving. Keep trying. Focus on the long game. The real change happens bit by bit, moment by moment, choice by choice. You might also discover new dimensions of yourself along the way. Perhaps you'll learn that you have a knack for bringing people together, or that your empathetic nature makes others feel safe. Or maybe you'll find that your passion for a particular hobby is the perfect magnet to attract people with similar interests. Embrace these revelations. They are clues guiding you toward the community that's right for you. Now, let's speak to something deeper. The transformation that occurs when you no longer feel alone. A woman who once believed she had no friends can blossom in the warmth of support. Her entire demeanor can change. She stands taller, speaks more confidently, and laughs more freely. When you belong, you dare to dream bigger. You start to set goals and envision a future, not limited by the fear of rejection. You become open to growth in every sense, professionally, creatively, and spiritually. That's the real treasure of healthy friendships. They become a mirror, reflecting back to you the best parts of who you are. They also become a refuge in times of trouble, a reminder that you don't have to face life's storms alone. In that sense, finding friends is about more than just avoiding loneliness. It's about discovering facets of yourself that remain hidden when you stay in isolation. As you stand on the cusp of this change, I want to leave you with a final challenge. Dare to be the person you needed in your darkest hour. Dare to show compassion to that new neighbor who looks lost. Dare to invite a lonely acquaintance to share a meal. Dare to ask, how are you really doing? And be prepared to listen. Because when you've experienced isolation firsthand, you have a unique opportunity to be a beacon for someone else. That's not just an act of kindness, it's an act of personal empowerment. By extending grace, you reinforce to yourself that the cycle of isolation can be broken. Through acts of service, compassion, and genuine interest in others, you reaffirm your own worthiness. You declare, I have love to give, and I choose to share it. In doing so, you build a life that's rich in connection, mutual support, and meaning. And that, my friends, is the ultimate reward. It's a life where loneliness no longer holds the final word. It's a life where you realize that even if you sometimes feel alone, you are never truly powerless. You hold within you the capacity to reach out, to connect, to change someone else's reality, and by doing so, transform your own. So, as we close this time together, I urge you to reflect on everything we've covered. Think about the beliefs that have held you captive, the hurts that have shaped your perspective, and the steps you can take to build genuine friendships. Recognize that courage is not reserved for epic heroes. It's for ordinary people facing everyday battles, one conversation, one risk, one new connection at a time. Walk out of here tonight with a sense of renewed purpose. Commit to no longer standing on the sidelines of your life, watching opportunities for friendship pass you by. Decide that you are worthy of meaningful connections, and then act like it. Show the world who you really are, a person of value, of depth, of compassion. Extend that compassion to others, be open to receiving it in return, and watch how your relationships flourish. And if you stumble, which you will, don't let that deter you. Every stumble is a chance to learn to refine your approach and to come back stronger. Believe that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory over the chains of isolation. Let that belief fuel you. Let it push you to keep reaching out, to keep believing, to keep forging relationships that lift you and others to higher ground. This is your life, your journey, and your chance to break free from loneliness. Take it. Embrace it. And when that spark of connection lights up in your heart, nurture it and pass it on so we can all shine a little brighter together. That's the promise of community. That's the promise of hope. And that's the promise I leave with you tonight.